I now want to bring in senior advisor for the Trump 2024 campaign, Corey Lewandowski. Corey, good morning to you. Thanks for being with me.
Good morning.
You know, many have questioned whether or not the VP debate will move the needle in this 2024 race. I wanted to share this with you. A Decision Desk HQ analysis of past election cycles finds that 10 of the last 11 vice presidential candidates who won their debates ultimately went on to the winning ticket in November. I know you've seen it, many outlets choosing Vance as the winner, who was much more comfortable on stage last night. Does the Trump team think his performance moves the needle for President Trump at all?
I think we believe that, and it's clear that every poll indicates this. JD Vance won last night. His command of the issues was impressive. And it's because JD Vance has had the opportunity over the course of the last many months to sit down and take the tough questions from the members of the media. And you contrast that with Tim Walz, who has not done any one-on-one interviews. That was clearly evident last night. Now, look, the debate had some civility to it, which I think every American appreciates. But that being said, these two candidates have a very different vision for what America should look like for the next 4 years. And Senator Vance's vision last night was on clear display. He had an amazing command of the issues. And Tim, in my opinion, Governor Walz, seemed very unsteady on his feet. It's not time to be learning the job when you have the job. And that's why I believe JD Vance had an enormously successful performance last night.
I want to bring up one of the moments that caught our attention last night, and I'm sure everybody watching at home, controversy this morning after those CBS moderators cut the VP candidates' microphones. Here's that moment for everybody to see.
Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
The rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on.
Thank you, Senator.
That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut.
Yeah, kind of awkward, a tense moment at times. Moderators saying they're trying to move the moment along. But what's the Trump campaign response to that very moment? And the microphones, Corey.
Well, once again, it shows that the candidates aren't allowed to articulate the positions that the American people want to talk about. And the moderators want to inject themselves to become the news story as opposed to moderating the debate. They want to become the debate. And once again, it's disappointing because it's only the American people that suffer. And when it comes to the issue of illegal immigration, something that Donald Trump has talked about and JD Vance has talked about for a long time, the moderators didn't want to allow Senator Vance to talk about what's really going on here. Their issue and answer was, hey, let's move this debate along. What is more important than protecting American citizens from the plight of illegals pouring across our border and killing Americans? Nothing. And so the fact that they cut the microphones off when the rules were they weren't going to do that just shows that once again they showed their bias, and JD Vance did a masterful job of continuing to talk and let the American people know of just how devastating the Biden-Harris-Walz failures are on the issues of illegal immigration.
And Corey, less than a minute left, 34 days left in this campaign cycle. What does Trump need to do to get some more momentum in his corner to sway it his way?
Well, look, if you believe the public opinion polls, and the Quinnipiac poll came out yesterday, Donald Trump is up 6 points in the state of Georgia. He's up 2 points, which is a swing of 4 points in the last week in the state of North Carolina. Momentum is clearly with Donald Trump and JD Vance. And the reason is one team talks about being a leader and the other team is the leader. Listen, yes, I know Kamala Harris is finally going to the ravished area of North Carolina and Georgia today, but Donald Trump was there on Monday. One has led on this issue. The other one talks about leading. We also have a crisis in the world right now. We see what's going on in Israel. We see what's going on in the Middle East, the Ukraine and the Russia conflict. Donald Trump would solve these problems very quickly. And what is probably the most important thing happening right now in our country is the longshoremen are on strike.
Yeah, we're following that closely. Oh, Corey, one more question before I let you go. Will Trump say yes to another debate, or is that dead in the water?
Look, I think there's no value of doing another debate. People are already voting. And so, what are we going to have a debate in 3 weeks when 80% of the population has already voted? People know where Donald Trump's positions are on the issues. We're still waiting to see where Kamala Harris is.
Okay, copy that. Corey Lewandowski, thanks so much, sir. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. Also, don't forget to click that red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.